Whether or not you're a fan of the Halloween series, you obviously know that the score is one of the most quintessential parts of the franchise. And if you don't like the movie, you can't deny that original 1978 score has that iconic status. I mean, anybody off the street can recite that main theme song probably within 10 seconds of me asking. So as a creative way to talk about the series, I didn't want to rank the franchise just based on how much I like these films, but I wanted to rank the franchise based on how much I like these soundtracks. Meaning I'll have to rank some of my absolute favorites lower on this list just simply because some of these other movies' soundtracks are way better. Now, I'm not ranking this list just simply based on each movie's variation of the theme song. I'm pretty much ranking this list on the whole entire album from front to back. Stuff like, is it a good listen from top to bottom? Is there more good tracks than bad tracks? Does it relate to the movie's themes? And does it directly fit in the scene it was used in the movie for? And whenever I'm talking about a certain song on the album, I'll put either a snippet or a screenshot of the song in the video for you. So with that being said, number 14 is going to be Halloween Resurrection, composed by Danny Lux. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you guys, this album is pretty much dog shit. With all due respect to Danny Lux and all, I just don't think he was the right man for the job. Looking at his other notable credits, other than Halloween Resurrection, we got stuff like Grey's Anatomy, NYPD Blue, and My Name is Earl. So that goes to show you right there that this guy was probably mishired. Now, one thing I will give him is that he does do a good job at his rendition of the Halloween theme song. The slow pace and the hard-hitting notes almost give this sort of melancholic listen. And combine that with the vocals that appear towards the end, it makes for a very good rendition. It just sucks because I think it deserved a better album and a better movie to be paired with, because some of this stuff just feels so misscored and so out of place. I mean, even in the beginning when Laurie dies, right after she French kisses Michael on the lips, we get this almost whimsical track as she falls to her death. Even from when I was a kid, I've always thought this scene sounded so goofy and out of place. The song is called Chase Laurie. It's about 9 minutes long and it's nowhere near deserving of that length. About 7 minutes in, you'll hear this Titanic-like musical sequence, and that's what they use for Laurie's death. And pretty much from here on out, it only gets worse within the album. And I'll be honest with you, this is one of those albums I never really listened to that much up until now when I had to do it for the video, and now I know why, man. This album is a chore to get through. If it isn't just a generic action sequence track playing, then it's just a moody background noise loop. And honestly, I couldn't tell whether the track ended or started just because all the tracks started to blend in together towards the middle of the album. Listen to all 2 minutes of Jen's Prank, you'll get where I'm coming from. And now let's move on to number 13, and number 13 is going to be Halloween 2 Rob Zombie, composed by Tyler Bates. Now, I want to first off start by saying I do love Rob Zombie's contributions to the franchise. I just think the composition work is a weaker aspect of his entries. Now, this score isn't necessarily bad like Resurrection, it just doesn't stand out too far from other Rob Zombie scores. In my honest opinion, I feel like you can take a track from this album and put it over a scene in Devil's Rejects and you wouldn't notice a difference because they almost sound the same. I feel like there is some truly terrifying moments on this album, like I Killed a Man. It definitely fits in with the dark portrayal of Michael Myers in the second one. And on Love Shack, we get moments of brilliance riddled in on the intro. But then halfway through, he kind of just gives up, and then we get this just gloomy instrumental for the rest of the song. I mean, I guess it makes sense in context of the scene, but I feel like there was more to be had in that section of the song. But the 4th track on the album called Stairs, I feel like you can just put that over a scene in Otis Killing and Devil's Rejects, and I wouldn't even bat an eye because it sounds so similar. Yeah, unfortunately the first couple tracks on this album are where the bright spots are. There's a song on here called I Won't Let You Down. It's eerie, it's suspenseful, and it really does make you wish the rest of the album sound like this. But unfortunately, a lot of the usual shaky cam music that Rob has in some of his movies are pretty much found in a lot of this album. But I still think he did a good job at doing his version of the theme song. Both of his renditions of the theme song almost feel like he took the original one and almost put it through a Rob Zombie filter. In my opinion, Tyler Mane was one of the more stronger and fast-paced Michael Myers that we've got to witness yet. And even to this day, he's the tallest one to take on the character. And in this version of the theme song, it feels like a direct reflection of that. It's brutal and angry, and it feels just like his kill scenes in this movie. But yeah, just a lot of wasted potential in this album for me, in my opinion. But one last thing, there is a song on here called White Horse. And like I said, guys, I am a very big fan of this movie, but having to hear that track once again definitely made me want to take some points off for it. But moving on to the next one, the next entry, number 12, is going to be Rob Zombie's Halloween 1, composed by Tyler Bates. One of the big reasons why this gets the edge over the second one is because I do enjoy the theme a lot more. Now call me crazy, but the weeping sounds towards the middle of the song almost kind of remind me of Deborah Myers crying. Like, it sounds like her witnessing the evil her boy has become. And there's also a lot more renditions of familiar tracks that appear on this album too. And just like the theme song, it feels like a Rob Zombie filtered version. Tyler Bates does a really good job at doing this. Track 6, The Judith Kill, is basically The Shape Stalks. Only this version has some grit to it, and it feels a lot more aggressive, fitting in with the scene, and also just fitting in with Michael Myers' childhood home in the movie. But unfortunately, other than the familiar tracks we get on this album, it's just more shaky cam music. But even from an album standpoint, this album is 33 songs, and some of the songs range from 17 seconds and go all the way up to 7 minutes. Which begs the question and had me thinking why you didn't just combine some of these songs instead. Even the tracks feel uninspired, with one of the titles being called Michael Has Wood, which sounds like a subtext for a Halloween porno spoof. And honestly, maybe I'm a little biased for putting the first one over the second one, just simply because of the renditions of the original 1978 score, but it feels like Tyler put way more effort into those tracks than he did on most of his 2 entries. And for me, those renditions make for the better listen. But on to number 11, and that's going to be Halloween H2O, composed by John Ottman with a little bit of contributions by Marcos Beltrami. Now, I won't lie, I've always loved John's contributions to the score, and I know a lot of fans, and even the people who helped make this movie, did not like his whimsical approach to this album. But I just love how the tone and the sound is on the complete opposite side of the other movies. Now, don't get mad at me, but if I was just ranking this just based on the theme songs, I think this theme song would rank a lot higher. It almost feels like a Danny Elfman, an epic orchestral version of the Halloween theme song. It definitely doesn't fit in with the theme songs, but that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. And when Laurie comes out of that building and she screams, I get chills every time I watch it, and trust me, I'm not even the biggest fan of this movie. The music for Laurie is great too, and serves a great contrast to the one we got in 2018. With the song Laurie's Fears, it starts out very somber, then slowly becomes more disturbed. Almost symbolizing the facade that Laurie puts on throughout this movie. A lot of people, even her own boyfriend, think she's this unbothered headmistress lady. She even has an alias to this one, adding more to this peaceful facade that she gives. But as we dive more into her psyche, we slowly find out that she's still just as terrified of Michael as she was in 1978. But speaking of Michael, while his backing tracks in some of Ottman's score sounded whimsical, I still think he found a great way to make Michael scary, with Bathroom Terror being one of my favorite tracks and favorite Michael sequences in the movie. The worst thing I can say is what really nullifies this soundtrack and John's work is the fact that half of the score is the Scream score, because the producers didn't like Ottman's contributions. Now, I won't sit here and lie and say it sounds terrible, because at the end of the day, Marcos Beltrami is a great composer himself, but it literally is just copy and pasted. But if you want to look up Ottman's full original score, it is on streaming platform. It's not a masterpiece by any stretch, but it is nice to hear something we'd never heard in a Halloween movie before. I guess it ranks this high because I do appreciate John's boldness, and the tracks that got kept in I do really love. Next is going to be Halloween 6, the producer cut soundtrack, composed by Alan Howarth. To me, I've always felt like Alan doesn't get enough credit when it comes to the composition for this franchise. Being John's partner for so long, I feel like as if he's somewhat always been in his shadow. I mean, after John left the series, Alan had some pretty big shoes to fill, and I honestly think he did a stellar job at it. The 2 different cuts of Halloween 6 have 2 completely different sounds, and with the Cult of Thorn being the main focus of the producer's cut, you can clearly hear that just from this version of the soundtrack. Even from the main theme into one of the first songs, Dark Society, it already feels like you have a brown hood over your head 5 seconds into the song. And you might think that maybe this soundtrack only has a few minor differences when compared to the theatrical cut soundtrack. But I'm telling you, just listen to Take the Child on this album. It's completely different stuff being used for this score. And I truly just think that's a testament to how great Alan was and how dedicated he was to this franchise. And even stuff he probably could have cut corners on, like Be Still and Strode House. They're both way more gothic than their original counterpart. And they definitely set a different tone for the movie. But if you don't have time to listen to this album in full, or you just outright don't want to, just listen to this 8-minute track on the album called Thorn. It's a great representation of what this whole album sounds like. But unfortunately, there is a lot of tracks that I don't like compared to the tracks that I do like. And I think that's kind of what brings it down for me. And The Cult of Thorn is kind of a double-edged sword for this album. There's a lot of cool gothic tracks, yes, but there is also a lot of druids moaning on it. And that's what kind of brings down this album for me. It doesn't make for a great listen because at some points towards the album, you'll find yourself thinking you're watching Undertaker's WrestleMania entrance. But ranking at number 10 isn't exactly a bad thing. I mean, after H2O's ranking, I found it a lot more difficult to rank these albums. It's not a bad score by any means, but with some of these tracks I don't really enjoy that much. It just had to rank lower than some of the other ones. But on to number 9, it's going to be Halloween Kills, composed by John Carpenter, Cody Carpenter, and Daniel Davies. Now, it's kind of funny with this one because this one is my favorite of the Blumhouse trilogy, but as far as score goes, I just don't think it's as good as the other two. But there still is a lot of great stuff to be had, especially with the first couple tracks being the flashback sequence. A lot of this sequence's score definitely directly fits in with that same night. It doesn't really feel like a rendition, it feels like more as if John's updating his original score with newer technology. Even the track at the end of the flashback sequence called Standoff. Sure, it sounds a bit newer, but I'm willing to look the other way just because of how great it sounds. And whenever I listen to this version of the theme song, I always get a sense of dread whenever I listen to this version. The choir-like vocals almost give this depressing sort of feeling, similar to the loss of someone. And what this theme in the movie feels like is the loss of Haddonfield in a sort of way. At least when I'm referring to their sanity. And it feels like in this whole movie that they lose their sanity and their common sense when trying to hunt down Michael Myers. And obviously there's a lot of tracks with kill sequences on this album, with the movie being called Halloween Kills. But despite that, there's a lot of great piano ballads found on this album. There's a song on this album called Strode's at the Hospital, and if you're a big fan of the song The Shape Hunts Allison like myself, then you'll find this piano rendition to be very beautiful. And the song Frank and Laurie. Now I know this trilogy has a lot of writing flaws to it, but whenever these two interact on screen, whether it's this movie or the next movie, there's always a sentimental piece playing in the background. And even the song at the end, Michael's Legend. Now I know this scene is ridiculous when it's used in the movie, but when you listen to the song on its own merit and forget about that scene where he's manhandling everybody, and you kind of listen to it and picture your own Michael's Legend in your head, it definitely makes for a way better listen. But a lot of the tracks that really bring this album down is there's a lot of filler on this album. Much like the movie, there's barely any story on this album, and a lot of these tracks are just killing sequences. At the end of the day, guys, it is John Carpenter, so it doesn't sound bad, but when compared to the other two soundtracks, it's just little to be had on this album. But the biggest difference between this one and the ones that have come before it is that a lot of these tracks that aren't as good are a lot more tolerable. I'm less likely to skip some of these songs just for the sake of listening to the whole album. But some of these songs like Cruel Intentions or Hallway Madness are definitely songs I wouldn't seek out on its own. But the albums that rank higher than this one, the less tolerable tracks on those albums start to become a lot more scarce. And that brings me to number 8. Number 8 is going to be Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, composed by Alan Howarth. And this is another thing I was saying about Alan. After the commercial failure of Halloween 3, fans wanted Michael back on the big screen. And with John leaving the series, leaving it all up to Alan by himself, it definitely sounded like a recipe for disaster. But not only did he do a great job at bringing those first two iconic scores back to life, but he gave the album a whole completely different vibe. We're in the late 80s at this point, and I think the sound of this album is a direct reflection of that. I mean, even the theme song sounds like a coked up version of the original. And the theme song is so synonymous with that iconic intro. A lot of the original stuff on this album is great as well. I mean, even the melody that he creates on Haddonfield is one of the better pieces after the originals. And a song like Basement Terror is absolutely terrifying, making it seem like Michael hasn't missed a beat since his absence. And that fast-paced nature and rapidness that's in the beginning of the album is riddled throughout this whole thing. There's a 7-minute track called Still He Kills, and it's a great listen. Track 4, Darkest Night, absolutely puts you in that cold, dark setting of Haddonfield on Halloween night. It's not as fast-paced as a lot of these other songs, it's more slow in nature. But with the hard-hitting sequence at the end of the song, it almost feels like you've come face to face with the Shape yourself. This album alone is just a great body of composition. There's so many atmospheric tracks to listen to during the holiday, and what a great way to fill in the shoes of John Carpenter. And it's at a point now where this album ranks lower just because the next one that comes after it overshadows it even just by a tiny bit. So number 7 is going to be another Alan Howarth composed album. Number 7 is going to be Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. With Dominique Girard, a European director, taking a shot at the franchise, we definitely see the European influence spread out across the whole entire film. Anything from scenes, dialogue, set design, and it even spreads across the soundtrack as well. Halloween 5's soundtrack feels like the perfect middle ground between Halloween 4's more safe approach and Halloween 6's more Cult of Thorn gothic-like sound. So in a sort of way, it has that Halloween 4 familiarity, but it has that European flair sprinkled in throughout the whole entire album. We get different pitches and some off-key notes, and even instruments that weren't even used up until this point. I mean, even on the first track, The Revenge, it sounds familiar, and then about a minute and a half in, we get this terrifying sequence that sounds like Michael's pent-up rage after he pretty much got God in the ending of the fourth one. And at the ending of the second track, we get this sequence of off-key piano notes that just feel so angry. We get the rapid-fire drums that appear in the fourth film score, but if the fourth film felt like a machine gun going off, this film almost feels like a turret is going off in your ears. Halloween 5 has always been labeled as one of the more bizarre and head-scratching entries in the franchise, but when you listen to Dominique Girard speak about his plans and vision for the film, you can clearly tell that Alan was the right man for the job. Stuff like A Stranger in the House feels like renditions that could work in Halloween 5 and only work in Halloween 5. My personal favorite song on the album, Stop the Rage, about a minute and a half in we get this moment of silence, and then it picks back up with different instruments and different sounds going off in every single direction. Now this might feel like a stretch, but it almost feels like a perfect representation of what's going on in his head when he encounters Loomis in the Myers house. I also really enjoy the theme. The slower ticking in the background is more reminiscent of the original theme, but the way it sounds, it fits right in with the rest of the album's soundtrack. It's a perfect contrast, yet a perfect similarity. I guess the one thing I can say that's bad about this album is if you don't really like Halloween 5 like that, odds are you probably won't like this album either. There's a lot of weird direction and weird sounds that this album takes that definitely would steer off a lot of casual people. But if you like the movie despite its craziness, I would definitely suggest this album to you. With number 6, we're going back to John Carpenter with 1981's Halloween 2. I know a lot of this album is mostly just the original soundtrack with added synths, but I really just don't think it takes away from how iconic this score is. The soundtrack sounds and feels just like what the movie is. It's more The Night He Came Home, but just a little more violence added to it. Those dark opening notes to the theme feel more as a warning to us that Michael's still at large in this movie. And it's kind of hard to listen to this theme and not picture someone saying, "You don't know what death is." But once those added synths finally hit in the song, man, you can't help but to not get in that Halloween mood. Even with Laurie's theme, it's a little more fast-paced. And as the song progresses, that sense of peacefulness that is present in the original Laurie's theme, it starts to fade away. And the darkness of the notes become more and more present, almost warning us of Laurie's danger throughout this film. And that sense of urgency that Loomis has always carried with him when it comes down to tracking down Michael throughout the franchise, it's perfectly displayed in the song He Knows Where She Is. And we still get some original sequences going on, with one of my favorites being in the song Still He Kills. It's an almost perfect portrayal musically of Dick Warlock's angry version of Michael Myers. Another track that comes to mind is The Shape Stalks Again. It's the same formula as the original version of The Shape Stalks, but the original stuff that's added to the formula, it almost gives it an entirely different listen, with a more violent and mean approach. I guess this whole album is just a testament to how good John was. I mean, even for a movie he didn't even want to do in the first place, he still did a very outstanding job. With number 5, it's going to be Alan Howarth's theatrical cut version of Halloween 6. Now, first of all, I absolutely love the MTV metal soundtrack that Halloween 6 had. I know some people might find it corny or think it doesn't really fit Michael Myers, but to me, man, I think that shit's fucking awesome. I mean, even when Nightscape comes on in the soundtrack and you hear that badass guitar strumming in the background, it feels like I'm instantly being teleported into that version of Haddonfield. And back to what I was saying about Alan regarding Halloween 6, I feel like when someone tells you that you need to rescore an entire film again, I think that's going to come off as a little discouraging. I mean, he had every reason to kind of phone this version in, and I wouldn't even blame him. But instead, he still gave this soundtrack his all, and you can clearly tell. And I know sometimes in the different cuts we have some similar scenes, but yet his score isn't affected by that at all, and it almost feels like we're watching entirely two different movies. I mean, just watch the opening sequence, for example, when Michael's chasing down Jamie and the baby. And with a track like Halloween Curse playing in the background, those guitar riffs enhance that scene in almost every way for me. We even get some original brilliance by Alan with the song Innocence, a much needed peaceful ballad that contrasts the more intense tracks that pop up during the soundtrack. Even in the song Michael's Back, a song that plays during Deborah's kill in both cuts of the film, we get this added sound effect that's only present in a theatrical cut score. It's a little minor, but to me it fully emphasizes Michael's reign of terror in this movie. And like I was saying on the producer cut soundtrack, there's a lot more emphasis on the Cult of Thorn. And with this version of the soundtrack, I feel like it emphasizes Michael a little bit more. But there is still a lot of great cult-like tracks in this album, with Thorn Ruins being one of my favorites. I don't really have a really big deep meaning as to why I like this album so much, I just think it kicks so much ass. Even if you don't like the movie, in my honest opinion, the album itself is definitely worth a listen. But moving on to the next one, it's going to be Halloween Ends with number 4, being composed by John Carpenter, Cody Carpenter, and Daniel Davies. Even on the opening track, Where is Jeremy? Once we get towards the ending of the track, it almost feels like we're starting the journey of Corey Cunningham's downfall into despair. And I've always loved this version's rendition of the theme song. It's almost the same exact notes as the original, although there's two separate notes that play at the end of each sequence. And to me, that's always felt like they're kind of telling us that this is a familiar story with a different twist to it. Like, this is still Halloween, but it's not as familiar as the Halloween we all know and love. And even Laurie's theme in this version of the album feels like a story in itself. And to me, it kind of feels like Laurie's life in this timeline. It starts out sounding more damaged and dark like how Laurie was in the beginning of this timeline, and then it slowly evolves into a more peaceful ballad, just like how Laurie ends up being towards the ending of this trilogy. And when we get to the point in the movie where Corey's descent hits its climax, we get this badass track called Evil Eyes where the ending fully captures that. And as the song Transformation plays, it feels like a full reflection of Corey onto himself. To me, it's always sound like the aftermath of the night that Corey took the mantle of evil. We later get a track called Corey and Michael, which sort of combines both the characters' theme songs into one song. It's a perfect blend, starting out with Corey's theme and fading into Michael's theme, but the last 30 seconds is Corey's theme, almost kind of symbolizing who's the one who has the upper hand now. Now, my favorite track on the album and my favorite scene in the movie has to be the junkyard.
What the fuck? Terry? What's wrong? Billy's dead!
It's Corey's first real big slasher sequence on his own, but it's also Corey's chance to get back at the people who've been wronging him since the start of the film. It's perfectly scored in my opinion, sounding like a 4-minute long epic. If Evil Eyes represented the climax of his story, then Junkyard fully represents the finished product. Even some of the slower songs that show up on this album are great, with Corey's Requiem being among my favorites. And even Cherry Blossom sounds like it's ripped straight out of a Silent Hill game. Yeah, everything in this album from top to bottom sounds absolutely amazing. And it fully captures that story of Corey Cunningham in my opinion. And even if you don't like Corey and you don't like the movie, I would still recommend this album to anybody. And number 3 is going to be Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, composed by John Carpenter and Alan Howarth. With Myers' absence in this film, we don't get too many of those familiar sounds like we do in the first 2 films. Instead, we're treated to an entirely different soundtrack. And despite that, this soundtrack mixes and blends perfectly well within the Halloween franchise. It never sounds out of place, and it feels like a perfect continuation from the first 2 film soundtracks. As soon as we even start the album, we get treated with peak John Carpenter with Season of the Witch, a slower track with more menacing notes being placed throughout the background. And as we get to the second track, the main title's theme, this is a theme song that, dare I say, is just as iconic as the original. Those energetic notes throughout the song flawlessly portray the sudden sense of danger that Colonel Cochran has brought onto the town of Santa Mira. Even by just listening to this album, you can clearly tell that John had a lot more passion for this project more than he did the sequel. For example, just listen to that terrifying sequence at the end of Starker and Marge. Or the more darker tracks that play in the factory like The Rock and Stonehenge. They're both about 3 minutes long, but you can clearly tell how much effort was put in to make Colonel Cochran sound as threatening as possible. But not only does this soundtrack do immense justice at enhancing the Halloween 3 story, it perfectly captures and illustrates that vintage 80s Halloween trick-or-treating feel. I know listening to some of these albums might seem as a stretch, but I'm telling you, this is the perfect album to listen to during the Halloween season. The song I Really Love This and Drive to Santa Mira are 2 variations of the same song, but as soon as you put them on, you can instantly picture children running around in Don Post masks trick-or-treating. And obviously, we have to talk about the Silver Shamrock commercial that appears on the soundtrack. I promise you, if you never listen to this song, it'll only take 1 or 2 tries before it gets stuck in your head. And I mean, at this point, we're in the top 3, guys, so these albums are damn near perfect. And to be honest, whether you're a fan of the franchise or just a fan of the holiday in general, odds are you'll find this album to be damn near perfection as well.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
Now we're at the final 2, and number 2 is going to be Halloween 2018, composed by John Carpenter, Cody Carpenter, and Daniel Davies. So I know this movie has garnered a lot more hate than it did when it first came out, but to be honest with you, I still have those rose-tinted glasses sewed right onto my face. The theme song feels like the closest one to the original. I understand completely though, guys. I do have my problems with the movie as well, but a big reason why I still love the movie even to this day is because of the soundtrack. The soundtrack, at least when it came out initially, it felt like it was welcoming us fans back with wide open arms because how familiar it sounded to the original. And that familiarity immediately starts off with the theme song in the beginning. The theme song almost feels like it has a double meaning to it. With it sounding so familiar, it felt like the score was almost reassuring us that this is the same Michael Myers that's more in line with the original. And with it sounding so similar to the 1978 style, it feels as it's reminding us that 1978 is the only one that matters in this movie. It's a great version, I might add, and listening to it immediately takes me back to opening night seeing this movie. We find out early in the beginning of the film that Laurie is still very traumatized from that night in 1978. We find out that she hasn't been the best parent and that she's also an alcoholic. And this new version of Laurie's theme sounds like a shell of its former self. And just like her character, it sounds like a scarred and wounded version of the original Laurie's theme. And as we progress more and more throughout the movie, the shape finally returns to Haddonfield, and the track that plays for this scene is absolutely amazing. I know at first it just sounds like the main theme song, but about halfway through we get this reworked version with a whole new different sound. And we're only at track 7, and at this point already, with his new team, it feels like John is showing his balls at this point, showing us that he still has the Midas touch when it comes to composing. And then we move on to The Shape Kills, and some of these notes that hit in this song feels like repeated punches to the gut. And one of the more original pieces on this album, The Shape Hunts Allison. This song not only has to be my favorite song on the album, but nonetheless my favorite track that's probably been written since the 1978 original score. I mean, this is a brand new Michael Myers chase sequence written by John Carpenter. Just listen and hear those siren-like noises that get more and more intense as the song goes on. You can almost feel that impending doom that Allison feels when she's running away from Michael Myers. And now nearing the ending of the album, if you ever want to levitate, just listen to the transition from The Shape Burns into Halloween Triumphant. Those keyboard notes slowly playing the Halloween theme as the theme slowly rises as Michael Myers burns inside that house is just perfect. And then ending with the 7-minute track Halloween Triumphant just makes it even more perfect. It's basically a suite of the entire album. Reciting many different tracks from the album, we get an electric guitar version of the Halloween theme and a recreated version of The Shape Hunts Allison. It's a very great listen. I mean, this album had to rank high for a reason, and this is definitely one of the soundtracks that I listen to from front to back on a very frequent basis. I mean, like I said, even if you hate this movie, and I do very well have a lot of problems with the movie as well, I still find the score to be one of the best. And that just leaves us with number 1, and of course it's going to be the 1978 classic John Carpenter's Halloween. Doing this list and reshuffling some of my entries after countless re-listens, I will say that the original score always remained at the top for me. To be honest, there really isn't much to say about this score that hasn't already been said, but I will say this. Almost 50 years to the date, this theme and score feels just as iconic and timeless as ever. Like I said earlier, the original theme is recited as easily as A Christmas Carol at this point, and I don't think that will ever change. And it just works so well due to its simplicity. It's very astounding to see newer composers' technology and the complexity of modern scores, yet this one remains untouched and is still terrifying. It fully captures and embraces Michael's evil, and in my opinion, it's just as necessary to the franchise as Michael is. John has stated before that he's shown distributors the movie without the score, and they thought it was terrible, but when he added that score, that's what made it so scary. When we start off with Halloween 1963, it's a perfect track, a perfect illustration of suspense through music, especially pairing with the POV shots through Michael. And then when we get to Laurie's theme, it feels like a perfect description of the character through sound. And with it being so gentle, it feels like a calm before the storm of what happens that night. And on to Myers' House, a song that fully immerses you into Haddonfield on that dark, eerie Halloween night. Once again, it's perfect, and it feels like you're with Loomis on his journey and finding his former patient. And who could forget the track The Shape Stalks, a perfect example of John's simplicity yet efficiency when it comes to composing. The song is slow and fast-paced at the same time, perfectly akin to Michael's stalkerish movements throughout the film. It's really hard for me to use any word other than perfect when describing this score, because it really is just that. It pretty much set the standard for horror scores, and whether you're listening to the original or the many different expanded versions, they all make for a great listen. It was more difficult trying to find great things to say about this one than it was to rank it, but it ranks so high just due to its perfection paired with the film, how iconic it remains, and just how great the songs sound on their own. But needless to say, I did find so many great things in most of these soundtracks, and I hope you enjoyed my ranking. And if you didn't, I still appreciate you for sticking around. This franchise means a lot to me, and ranking even just the scores was a daunting task. This video took a lot of time. If you'd like to hear more of my opinions on the Halloween franchise, or maybe more of my opinions on horror in general, leave a comment for me. And please feel free to comment your ranking of the scores or just your thoughts on the albums in general. And once again, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a like, and if you want to hear more of me, please subscribe as well.